Hey guys, my name is Matt, and welcome to my first watch restoration video. Hopefully you guys stick around all the way through to the end, because it would mean a lot to me, and I'd appreciate it. And I think that I did a pretty good job restoring this Sydney. So yeah, let's just dive right in. First thing I'm doing is checking the functionality. Right here you can see that little date hand moving. Moving on, you can see the two little discs inside are also turning. So all that seems pretty good. Next is the hand setting test. So you can clearly see that those hands are moving freely. Nothing is stopping them. So I like that definitely in both directions too. So that tells me that all the teeth on the wheels are intact and nothing's really rubbing against anything hard in there. Now I didn't show it, but I already took off the case back of this movement. And wow, just look at how pretty that thing is. Yeah, when I first saw it on eBay, I had to grab it, but it looks cooler in person. There it is in focus. Little zoom. Yeah, you can kind of see the marks to the left. That thing was really hard to get off. Looking at the case back, it looks like only one person has serviced this watch. With little weird markings down at the bottom right. I don't know what that's about. Anyways, first thing we're going to do is try to take out the stem, and to do that we need to take out this setting lever screw. And then it just pops right out. Just a couple little turns just to release the setting lever from the screw. Next thing I'm doing is taking out these little case screws right here. Those keep the case from falling out of the front. Um, Next thing I'm doing is taking off the balance wheel because I don't want to damage it when I take the movement out of the case, because these things are delicate, you know. And without it doesn't work. It doesn't tell time. You know, it's just power on the mainspring and nothing really happens because it can't oscillate back and forth and all that. Yeah, so just being very careful to take it out. You know, you don't want to stretch that spring out too far, so I'm just being kind of gentle, moving the whole watch to get it out. Then we're flipping it over, checking the, how circular the hairspring is, right? It looks pretty good to me. Yeah, very even coils, and that's spinning pretty nicely. Next thing we're going to do is try to pop that little bezel off that I just pointed out there. And to do that, I try to use this case tool, but I didn't really want to give. I didn't really want to grab. So you use your little Bergeron little case opener knife, and that did the trick really easily. So now what I'm doing, because the hands came out of alignment, is I'm putting the stem back in, and I don't need to re-engage the setting lever because the clutch is positioned towards those intermediate wheels, and that will turn the hands. Yeah, using your hand puller tools, you take off the hour, the minute, and the date hand at the same time. And then there's the seconds hand. Something very interesting about this dial is that it's convex, it's curved, right? It's not flat. So that seconds hand is actually bent, right? Um, and you'll see, I actually deleted the footage on accident, but when putting back the hands on this watch, it's really difficult to get them to not touch each other. All right, taking off the dial, you can see that it's curved, right? Like it's highest at the middle and lowest at the sides. So that's really interesting. I've never seen that before. I guess that's for all at a 1164s. That's what this movement is. Next, I'm just using a screwdriver to pry up the dial, being careful to not touch the date discs on the inside. Something very interesting about the brand Sydney. It's actually a Mexican company that died a long time ago, and they actually ripped off Bulova, and Bulova tried to sue. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking off that weekday disc, and it's a little bit spring loaded, so as I take it off it's going to kind of jump a little bit. There it goes. Next is the month disc. Yeah. Also in Spanish and all that. There it goes, it jumped. You know, you don't really want to grab uh, those date discs too hard, because too much friction will rub off that paint. Next thing I'm doing is taking off this plate that hides these two jumpers. And it also covers up the spring that actuates those two jumpers. There goes that screw. Some things just jump away from you sometimes. And there's the plate. There's the first jumper. Now, one thing to note in this watch is that all the jumpers are the same. So I think that's one of ETA's shortcuts to cut costs by just using the same machine to press the same shape part and then just figure out how to, you know, put it in the movement for different uses. Next is the plate that covers the jumper for the date wheel. There I am taking it off, and under that it's held in by a screw right there. Yeah, for this watch, all these screws are really tiny, you know. I didn't have to use anything above a yellow for most of it. I tried to do black, but no, they were just a little bit too small. There's that jumper again, same shape, you know. For a lot of watches, that's not really common. You know, you've got like different jumpers of different sizes and things like a chronograph. They're not always the same thing. This spring right here is actually very stubborn, right? And so I end up leaving it because it's not going to go anywhere. And cleaning it is not really an issue. Next, this is one of the screws that holds on this whole triple calendar module. Right? You could take up the whole triple calendar all at once. But I choose not to do that in order to clean the whole thing. Now I'm using a piece of Rodico. Now I'm gently prying off the whole module. There it goes. It's important to note that one of those pushers is holding it down too. The bottom left pusher has a screw on top that's not letting it come free, which I didn't know at the time.
I saw it. Oh, I got that. Oh my god.
Did you like that little sensor? I censored a cuss word. Anyways, yeah, I finally realized that you need to take off that screw to get the whole thing off. And yeah, that right there is just like, I don't know, it felt really good to finally get that thing off there, because it's the scariest part of the whole watch, because I don't really know how it works. But looking at it, there's still pieces that I need to take apart. Yeah, those two wheels down there are in charge of the majority of the calendar works. So the alignment of those two gears right there is actually fairly important. And I think that's the whole purpose of why there's a little hole in each of them. Doing a little bit of off-camera work there. I'm taking out those wheels. That silver wheel was actually very tough to get out, and I didn't take it out during the cleaning process, but I did get it out in the end. I cleaned it up with a piece of Rodico. Now those two wheels are stuck together, the hour wheel and the day wheel. Just pry those off. Yeah, so I can take off this screw of this silver wheel here, but it won't come off. That could be because of dirt, or because the tolerance in that post that it rolls on is like so small that it just won't come free. And so I tried pushing it from the top side so that it'll come out, but nothing was really working, so just kind of move on. Now I'm putting all the parts into my little containers here. These are very important to have because without these, they're just on your bench, right? And you can easily knock them off just with the force of your hand or even your breath. You can blow these parts off your bench, especially the screws. Yeah, so they're just taking into account the pushers are actually the exact same. Nothing about them is different. So by knowing that now, I can rest a little bit more easy knowing that if I put one in the wrong spot, it's not really going to do anything. Yeah, I put back on that hour wheel. Now I'm taking it off. Just to show you guys. Next, I'm using this Presto tool that I got for Christmas to take off this candy pinion right here. And there it is. It works super well. Even for me, because I have weak fingers. I didn't expect it to come that easily. That is a very long candy pinion. And that's because it has to go all the way through the calendar works. Now that's the little pusher. That's the actual part that you push. Now we're turning over the movement. I already took out the balance wheel, so it's no longer running. Sorry, it's not really in focus. It's also very bright. There it goes. We're going to put the stem back in so that I can wind down the mainspring. To do that, we're basically just going to do what I did in the beginning, but in reverse. So I push it all the way in, and then you screw the screw back in. Which I did not show. Yeah, but now basically I'm just pushing aside that click there with my tweezer, right? And it lets go of that ratchet wheel. And through the arbor, it's attached to the mainspring and the ratchet wheel. It'll unwind because that click is no longer holding the ratchet wheel close. And so I'm just noting that there's still a little bit of power on the escape.
There's a little bit of power left.
Yep, said it. Now I'm taking off the pallet fork bridge. I think it's really cool that they give you a little indent to put your screwdriver in, like right there. Now that I've taken that off, I could take out the pallet fork. And sometimes with watches that are a little bit newer and cleaner, that pallet fork is kind of wedged in between its own pivot and the teeth on the escape wheel, but here we can see there's no power left. So sometimes when you take that out, it kind of jumps. There I took off the ratchet wheel, probably with a piece of Rodico. Some things I don't leave in here for some reason. It's just a testament to my bad quality of video making. Here I can take off the click. And the click spring is just so tiny and kind of stuck in there, so I just, tap it out. Here I think I'm taking out, what am I doing? I'm taking off the bridge. The barrel bridge. And there, that's the crown wheel. And usually with these Swiss movements, that screw right there turns in the opposite direction either way. So to undo it, you have to tighten it, which is what I did. Now I'm using a piece of Rodico because the crown wheels are they're different wheels, Their job is to interact with the winding pinion. And so on the underside, they have teeth too. Next, I am actually taking off the barrel bridge.
Why did that feel so bad?
And I said that because that screw, yeah, it just kept unwinding, without anything really happening, which I didn't like. Here I'm gently using a screwdriver to pry off the barrel bridge, being careful to not damage the teeth on the mainspring barrel. And that just comes pretty freely. Next I'm taking off the train wheel bridge. There's the other camera angle because I accidentally didn't film the top F. My phone died. So there's that. Yeah, there's the third wheel, I think. There's the second wheel. It's got that extended pivot. And there's the escape wheel, which is very tiny. And there's the mainspring barrel, which is the biggest, which is also kind of the fifth wheel. Now I'm doing the keyless works. That was the setting lever spring. That was the yoke spring. That was the yoke. Now I'm unscrewing the setting lever screw, taking out the crown and stem. There's setting lever screw. Now next I get to pop open the mainspring barrel, which is fairly satisfying in my opinion. Yeah, now I got the camera angle back. Yeah, just to be careful to put your fingers over the lid because the mainspring is so old it can sometimes get out. And this is a lot of grease. And I was always under the assumption when I watch these restoration videos, they don't put grease. Especially on top of the mainspring. You know, because you don't really need a lot of lubrication in there. So now I'm taking out the mainspring, just being careful that it doesn't fling away. I use a fair amount of pressure because that is a very old mainspring. And we're definitely not reusing it. Alright, now we're just assessing everything and putting it back into the tray. Using all that Rodico to get all that nasty grease out of there. And it really wasn't nasty. It was quality grease. You could tell by the blue color and how it's kind of clear. It was that Mobius stuff. Now I'm pegging the pivots, the jewel holes, and the bearings. But first I'm dabbing it, the pegwood, in a bit of 100%, 99% IPA to disperse those oils. And now I believe I'm taking off one of the capstones for the balance. I like to do this before cleaning instead of after. Because somehow in my mind, imagining the balance wheel pivots touching that old oil, it's still not completely gone, just it doesn't sit right with me. And so now we're doing the same process, just pegging both sides of that train wheel bridge. Same thing for the barrel bridge. Now that's the underside. And now this is the mainspring barrel. We're just taking our IPA and we're getting all in those crevices. 360 degrees around there. Now this is the capstone for the escape wheel. Using a bit of Rodigo to take that off because it's flush with the plate. And you can see just a little bit of grease is still on there. Or maybe I cleaned it, I don't know. Now I'm using this thing called like silicone polishing sticks, right? And I'm taking that pivot and I'm putting it in there so I can polish those pivots, make it a little shinier. Now there, I'm trying to highlight that wheel I think is a little bit bent. I think that top pivot is a little bit bent, just to the left. It's fairly noticeable in real life, maybe not as noticeable on camera. Yeah, just showing off that polishing stick. Now I'm doing some more pre-cleaning. Oh, look at how dirty that thing is. It's got a bunch of old grease on there. Honestly, it looks like metallic stuff is coming off there, which I don't like. But it's good that we do this so that that's not in my ultrasonic cleaner. Yeah, now I'm just kind of cleaning up my bench. It's pretty funny. Alright, now with my gloves off, we're just going to polish this crystal. Because I'm not very comfortable with replacing it and taking it out. And it's not that bad. It's not warped or cracked or bad. Yep, and I did a little face. So here I probably polished it for about a minute and a half until I decided that I can keep going. So this time I'm timing it. Just to show y'all how long I did it for. And I did it for about 3 minutes on this one. I'm doing small circular patterns and switching it up sometimes with bigger circles around the perimeter because I want to get the perimeter too. And after that, it looks pretty freaking sweet. And this is all before cleaning. We haven't cleaned anything yet. And now, after looking at those pushers, I didn't really like how worn they were. You know, they've got indents and things, and I just think that they look, bad. So I'm taking a little bit of water, putting it on my 3000 grit sandpaper, and I'm just, kind of nonchalantly sanding off the top layer so that they're a little shiny. And there you go. Boom. Nice and shiny again. Just like that. Next thing we need to do is take out this balance wheel so that I can get to that underside of the jewel. And the first thing that I thought, when I couldn't get the stud to fall out, was that maybe it's held in by super glue, right? Because that's one of the things that you're not supposed to do, and maybe someone did it. And so it was so tough on there that I'm actually using screwdrivers to pry off the stud, by getting leverage on the hairspring and the other side of the hairspring, which is very dangerous. But there I kind of screamed because that took me an hour at least to get that off. And as you can see, the hairspring looks fine. And since I took out that stud screw, I have to now put it back in, which is easily one of the smallest screws in the movement. Probably the smallest one. And I'm just showing off my intricacy here by showing you that I actually did manage to get it back in. First try, too. No, actually not first try. But it was really difficult. And there you can see it's back in there. Now I'm taking off the capstone screws that are on the underside. See, this is the importance of taking off the balance wheel, so that you can get to those underside screws, because you can't do it through the hairspring or even through the balance staff, because it's the balance staff and you can't go through it anyway. Now I'm putting those really tiny screws on a piece of Rodico so they don't go flying. Next I'm pegging this capstone jewel and the balance jewel. Not really sure what you call that one. Now I got a different camera angle of me oiling that jewel after I cleaned it, making sure that it looks basically like a mirror. It's completely white in one angle and completely red in another. And there you can see I'm trying to show off the angles. There you go. That little drop right in the center is perfect in my opinion. Just perfect. Not too much, not too little. And there I'm holding that down with my finger, so I can screw in those little tiny screws, very tiny. You don't want to put any more force on it than just the screwdriver, because then they'll fly. And there you can see that turned out really nicely. Now we're going to put back on the balance. Now that stud screw really doesn't do anything, because that stud is just held in there so tightly, it's not going to come out even with that stud screw out. So now I'm putting back the little boot there, so that the hairspring is held in between a banking pin and that boot. Now I've oiled this capstone and I'm putting it back onto the main plate. A little nice and easy drop in. Then you twist that little screw back down. And now I'm having trouble testing this balance, right? You see it gets stuck. And actually this was because of the hairspring. See, I'm looking at it and I'm going, what is going on? Because I didn't do anything wrong. But there I thought, oh, maybe the hairspring's out of alignment, so I was just screw down the whole stud screw so that the little indent is being pushed by the screw. But yeah, I still couldn't really quite figure it out. I screw it down, it oscillates fine, so I know it's not the pivots or anything. But then I saw it. The thing that was getting it right was when I pried off the stud from the thing, the hairspring got bent downwards a little bit on that side that kind of juts out. And after I found that out, I pushed it out of the way so it couldn't touch the balance wheel anymore, and now it spins really nicely. Yeah, and so you can see it's a little bit conical in shape. I managed to get that down to where it's about flat. And there I'm just looking at beat error. Now that's pretty centered in between those two pins, so I'm good with that. Now I'm oiling the capstone for the escape wheel. Again, gently placing it onto the plate. Alright, fast forward 2 weeks later. I bought a new mainspring from this place called Local Time Limited in the UK. Oh my gosh. I love the packaging that they did on that. It was great. Shout out to Local Time. Now I'm oiling the bottom part of the mainspring with Mobius HB 1300. Giving it a fairly generous amount of grease and kind of spreading it around. We do that 3 times, 120 degrees apart from each other. Now I'm placing the new hairspring with the color side up. And first thing I'm doing is pushing in that bridle end so that it catches in the inside of the barrel. That's the most important part, because if you don't, it'll slip. And sometimes it's okay. It'll slip and then it'll catch, but you never know. You want to be careful. So you put in that bridle end first. I got the whole thing in first try. Oh my gosh, it was very scary. I waited 2 weeks for this thing. Now I'm doing a Mobius 9010. Because that'll spread very evenly and nicely as we wind the mainspring and it unwinds. I'm putting that Mobius 9010 on the top of the mainspring. Before I put in that arbor, I'd like to put a little drop of HB 1300 right where it spins at the bottom of the barrel. I'm using a thicker pair of tweezers there to put that in there because it's fairly tight when it gets in there. And then I put a bit of HB 1300 on that polished part of the arbor because that spins against this plate right here. And then I'm just popping it closed. Now I'm putting HB 1300 again right in that little crevice because that arbor is basically stationary the whole time unless you wind it, and the whole assembly spins around the arbor. Next thing I'm doing is I'm taking out this second wheel that I also bought from, I bought this from Cousins UK. It came same time. And what I finally noticed is that I think I was freaking out and it actually wasn't bent. So we ended up using the original one. So now I have a spare seconds wheel for a ETA 1164. So now I'm just putting a little bit of Mobius HB 1300 at the bottom where that barrel spins. This is some Mollygoat DX. I like to do this first so that I don't forget. This is a setting lever screw, and we need to put that on because the barrel bridge goes over this screw, and once you put the barrel bridge on, you can't put in that screw because it's got a little catch where it doesn't go all the way through the plate. So now we're putting HB 1300 on the underside of this plate too, because I noticed that it's a little bit. It's got like a. I don't even know. I don't know how to describe it. Anyways, now we're just checking how freely that moves, and the end shake, the side shake on that barrel is good, so I didn't really have to adjust it or anything. Now I'm screwing it down. Next, I'm putting HB 1300 also in the crevice where that little square-shaped arbor top meets that plate. Now we're just getting all of our wheels out of the tray. First thing we do is place the escape wheel down. Next is the seconds wheel. Here's the third wheel. And honestly, I don't even know if these are the proper names for these wheels. I just think that they are. It goes escape wheel, second wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, or also the center wheel. You know, I don't really know the names very well. You don't really have to be good at this. Some people, mainly good watch repairers, like to lubricate that arbor before, or the pivot, like the extended pivot before they put it down, but I don't really care. I'll get it at the end. Next, we're taking our clean bridge with the clean capstone. Oh yeah, I guess I failed to mention that I cleaned everything in an ultrasonic cleaner for 15 minutes. I could do longer, but yeah, I think that the results that we get are pretty good, so we're fine with it. Yeah, so I tried putting on that bridge in a position, and it didn't really want to do anything. The wheels weren't falling into their pivots very nicely. So now I'm gently putting it over all those pivots. Using your tweezers, you can adjust the alignment of the wheels. And now I'm using my little plastic stick to check if all the wheels are spinning, and there it is. Right there. Some argue that, putting the balance wheel on is the best feeling, or putting the mainspring into the mainspring barrel is the best feeling. I think that's the best feeling. Because I had this one watch where I broke the escape wheel because this bridge was so tight. It didn't want to go into the main plate. It was so tight, so you had to push it down really hard, and you have to be very sure that the wheels are aligned, and they weren't aligned. So that took me about a month to get those wheels to do it. It was a very small movement. Now we're using HP 1300 to lubricate the wheels with higher torque. That is, that they spin slower and they have more power because they're closest to the mainspring. Now I'm using Mobius 9010 to do that seconds wheel because it spins once a minute pretty fast. Now I'm lubricating the other side, with the same grease, and approximately the same amount because you don't want differences in friction. And I'm sorry that my hair keeps getting in the way. It's very annoying. For me included. Now I'm just checking again. It should spin much nicer just moving around those oils. It spins very freely. Alright, here I've got our click spring, and the ratchet wheel, and I forgot to clean it. So I'm just using a piece of Rodico. Because I'm not sure if that's paint on there or maybe it's blued somehow. I don't know. I just don't want to ruin it because the ultrasonic cleaner that I have has a heating option, and I don't want to heat it up and cause the paint to come off. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't affect the running of the watch if it's dirty or clean. It just can't get any of that debris into the train of wheels. Now I'm screwing down the click spring after putting in that little spring, and there you can see it's jumping as I push it, which is good. Next we're taking the ratchet wheel and we're putting it gently over the arbor part, the square arbor part. I'm not really sure what you call that. I'm twisting it with my finger so that it catches with the click and the arbor. This movement is very pretty. I just wish I got it in focus more. There you can see I'm screwing it down. Moving on, we're going to assess the crown wheel. We're putting in this little intermediate post, which I'm not sure why they have that. Doesn't really matter. And I'm lubricating it with HP 1300 again on both sides of that post so that the oil is more evenly distributed. Now, I don't think that this was necessary, but I'm putting it at the top of that crown wheel because this screw may, rub against it. On the bottom of that screw, it may rub against that crown wheel. So I'm just being careful by putting a little bit of HP 1300 there too. HP 1300 is for literally everything. Oh, and you see that when I screwed that, when I screwed that wheel, it went I screwed the ratchet wheel and then it went backwards. That is indicative of a freely spinning train. You see that? It went forwards and then it went backwards. That train is spinning so freely that it's actually spinning backwards at the end. And that also tells me that my mainspring is very good. So I'm really glad that I waited for that new mainspring, because then I'd have to use the old one. Here I'm just taking that Molykote DX and I'm putting it on the center wheel pivot. I've already lubricated that pivot with HB 1300, but the actual part that sticks up needs to be greased, because that cannon pinion is basically crushing that pivot just enough where it can touch it and spin freely. So that grease just helps it do it a little bit nicer. Now I'm using HB 1300 to lubricate the post of the minute wheel and put it on that little track that the minute wheel rides on. And as you can see, when I move the minute wheel, that escape wheel starts turning, which is nice. Now I'm putting HB 1300 on the intermediate wheel posts, which I like that this watch has too, because by doing that, you can actually wind it in the same direction as you do setting the time, which I find is kind of a feature, to be honest. Then I'm using HB 1300 again, not in focus. So sorry about that. Next thing I'm doing is putting down the winding stem securely with a piece of Rodico, just because I'm a little nervous that I've had moments where that Molykote DX will stick to the oiler and then it'll cause it to fall over, and you don't want that. Next we're putting it on the clutch wheel, Molykote DX. And the winding pinion. I like to be fairly generous with it. So yeah, we're just taking a little bit more out. Yeah, and that winding stem, one thing that I'd like to point out is that you need to put grease on all four sides of that square part of the stem, because it's not gonna migrate over to all sides. It's a square, it's not a circle. And sometimes I watch watchmaking videos where they don't put grease on all four sides, and it just kind of makes me a little upset, because you just need to think a little bit logically about how that grease can't really get over to the other sides, because it's a square. It's 90 degrees, not a circle. Now I'm just checking that functionality of that winding stem, which is okay. It's doing what it's supposed to. And now we have to put back the setting lever, which is a fairly risky business. It's not really, it's just difficult. Being careful that my fingers don't crush the extended pivot on the second wheel, because it is very delicate and you can bend it very easily. That setting lever screw caught onto the setting lever very nicely. Now I'm using HB 1300 to lubricate the post that the yoke will sit on. Just checking the functionality of that. I also put Molykote on the sides of that clutch wheel that the yoke will interact with. Now we're just putting in the yoke spring. I'm going to use my piece of plastic to do that a little bit safer. Getting two hands on the spring is always important, 2 points of contact. That way you have kind of like a crutch. Now I'm using Molykote TX to try to lubricate right in between where that yoke and that spring interact, because there is a little bit of sliding action that happens there. Next, this is a setting lever screw, or setting lever spring, right? And it also functions as a holding down that yoke and that yoke spring. Also functions by holding in those intermediate wheels. And so first you tighten down that screw a little bit, let it engage with the setting lever, and you screw it all the way down. Now I'm just lubricating that setting lever because that action is fairly friction based. It's very tough to move it in and out like that. So that lubrication is very helpful to this process of doing that. And I forgot to clean the balance or the pallet fork earlier, so now I'm just using lighter fluid to do that because lighter fluid does not dissolve shellac. It doesn't melt shellac like IPA does. So basically, you can leave it in there for as long as you want. I didn't do it for that long. So you take your naphtha, your lighter fluid, and I just put it in a little container and I just shake that around. So once I've done that, I kind of agitated it off. Then I'm using my little blower to get all the excess off. And now we can gently put it back into the movement. Or I can then take the pallet fork bridge. And once I know that those two pivots are aligned, because it's not like a wheel, it doesn't spin. You have to use your best judgment with the pallet fork because it's one of the more delicate pivots. As you can see, it flicks back and forth fairly nicely. There you go. And I already screwed it down there. Now I'm putting all the wind into the movement. This is the main event though. Oh, before we get to that, I have to grease. I have to put grease on the pallet fork stones. This is a 9415 grease. I think I got this on Amazon. Oh, there's my hair. I'm so sorry about the hair. It's so annoying, and I don't know why am I showing this. Next, I'm putting in the entire balance assembly. This is the part. This is the part that I love. I've watched this so many times over because it's great. This movement is beautiful. Anyways, I'm just making sure that impulse jewel is in line with the little fork part of the pallet fork. And then once I put that jewel over that pivot, it starts immediately. First try. One of the only first tries of this whole thing. Now I'm just using my brass tweezers to make sure that balance bridge doesn't move anywhere. I don't want to say the actual word because it's called a balance cock. It just sounds funny to me. I don't know. I'm immature. Here we're putting it on that screw. It's called a cock because it's only held in by one screw. It's not me making that up. So yeah, I'm using my tweezers to hold down that screwdriver so that it doesn't slip on accident. Pretty much all my tools now are Bergeron. Those tweezers are Bergeron. The screwdrivers are Bergeron. I love Bergeron. And so you can see that hairspring is breathing in and out very nicely, which is great. That's one indication of good amplitude. And now I'm winding the watch basically up until I can't anymore. And this mainspring, it takes a lot of wind because it's brand new. Alright, there's my setup with the time grapher. And this is actually a little while after, maybe about a week after. I didn't get good footage of the time graph, but I wanted to show you 313 degrees of amplitude, 319. That is very good. And then after a bit of adjusting, 300 plus 5 seconds. These are in a dial up and dial down position, so this is +1 305. Beat error looks good. Below 1 millisecond. This is all very good news. That right there is just basically testament to waiting. Now, first thing that we're checking is the amplitude, which is basically how far back and forth that balance wheel spins. And as you can see, it does almost 2 full turns around. So the real amplitude is about 300 right there. Maybe even closer to like 290. So now with that done, the watch running great, we can take a look at the calendar works again. here I'm putting on that jumper and holding the spring back. The spring that I left in there. And I didn't show it because it was a bit complicated. Those wheels, yeah, under that bridge, that module I already put on. Now I'm checking the functionality of this of the pusher. Next is the pusher for the weekday and the month. And I put a little bit of grease in there so that it will spin freely. And now I'm putting a bit of grease on the bottom side of that pusher so it slides freely. There's a lot of contact points in this calendar works. Now this is really cool to me. So this slides, right? But it also slides on that setting lever, right? So that when you pull out the crown, it does a different function, right? It does the weekday. But when you push in the crown, it adjusts the month, which I thought is super freaking awesome. So anyways, I put on the entire module here, screwing down the bottom pusher. And a couple of times I take it out and I put it back in, just so that I can put on the springs, put on the pushers for the top of this module. And now I'm putting in the springs, the little spring. It's very hard to notice. And once I got that, those two little jumpers, it's called a jumper, that's what it is. The two jumpers will jump. Is it called a jumper? It's called a jumper. What am I doing right here? I don't know why I freeze framed that. I forget. I had something in mind that I was gonna say. Oh, right. I don't even know. Now I'm lubricating the part that interacts with the setting lever because that sliding action causes a little bit of friction. And there you can tell that it's kind of sliding, but not very freely. So I took it off, and now I'm just lubricating the top of the setting lever spring and the top of that pusher because it glides against that too, and it's held down by a screw. And there you go. It glides much nicer now with that Molykote TX there. Screwing it back down, checking again. You can see that that's a little bit nicer. So I like that. Now this spring, the spring that got away from me earlier, was a pain to install again. And I'm gonna show basically the entire process of me trying to get it in. Spoiler alert, it didn't work the first try. Spoiler alert, didn't work the third try. You know, that spring was very difficult because it has nothing to sit on. It's not held in by a screw. It's held in by pure luck, honestly. There I'm just lubricating that part of the main plate because the pusher interacts with it. But honestly, that's not really necessary unless you push in the pusher all the way, and I don't even think you can. So now we're just trying again. And once I'm confident, I'm going to put my finger down on that whole module so that spring can't really move very freely. Alright, and now I think this is the moment, which is also the moment where it's not on camera, that I actually get it. Not this one. Oh, not this one. I do get it though, trust me. Oh, sorry, I'm tired. Alright, this is it right here. I finally realized that I got both of them to do it. Yeah, you see, I pushed that bottom pusher and that top one goes because they're both held in by the same spring. So by pushing one, I'm pushing out the other. And now I'm just screwing down that entire module so that spring can't move anywhere. And there you go. Checking the functionality of that date pusher. It actually spins the date wheel. Now we're ready to put on these two discs. Again, I don't recommend touching the discs like that. I'm not a professional. Don't do that. And yeah, I didn't really know it at the time, but you have to pull out that crown in order for that disc to spin. So there I was like, oh god, I broke it. I didn't break it. Next is the month wheel. But now I'm using a piece of plastic, which is still better, but not perfect. You can't always be perfect. And there you go, it jumped. That wheel jumped, which is nice to see. And there you go, the month wheel is going to spin as the week wheel does not spin. That disc. And it's not a disc, technically, it's a wheel because it's got little gears at the bottom. I'm just laughing at what I'm saying. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I'm undoing those dial foot screws. Because with them pushed in, you can't really put on the dial. Here are the two pushers that we polished earlier and cleaned in the ultrasonic. I'm putting them in the indents of the case first. Not really sure if I have to, but I didn't lubricate the sliding action of those pushers. They're just kind of held in there by metal, and I didn't do anything. Undoing the setting lever screw, I take back out the crown so I can put it into the case, the movement into the case. Just look at the dial, man. This watch is from, I don't know, about the 40s. And look at how pristine it is. It's perfect. Yep, turning over the movement, we can see that it's still running pretty nicely. Very nicely, in my opinion. Now we're putting back in the movement retaining screws. Not totally sure what you call those. Movement holding screws on. Alright, once we got those back in, I do the setting lever screw. Now we're checking the functionality of the calendar works. We can see that those discs are moving in there nicely. And now I'm using the crystal as a temporary holder so that the pivots don't touch, so that the center wheel pivot doesn't touch the, little gel cushion. And now I noticed that the regulator arm was swung out a little bit too far to the right, so I just adjusted it. And I accidentally deleted the footage where I put the hands on. So I decided to just play the footage where I took them off in reverse. So please enjoy as I put the hands back on. Yeah, I just want to take a second to thank you if you watched all the way through to the video, because we're getting to the very end. Yeah, so I think that after this, we're going to see the watch when it's fully done. And there it is. I put the strap back on and everything. Screwed back down the setting lever screw. Here I am at school. This is me at school. I adjusted the color so you'd think that it looks a little nicer. Here I am at chapel. Just look at the lights bouncing off the crystal in the case. Oh, this watch is beautiful, man. And it was also quite the journey. So thank you for tuning in and watching my video. I'm sure that I'll have more to post within the coming months. Maybe within the coming weeks, I don't know. Maybe we've got a Rolex in the lineup. But until next time, see you later, guys.